because an important moment of the conflict is unfolding right now and an important time for the security of Ukraine and the security of all of Europe. Today there is essentially only one state proposing a peace that would be a capitulation, which is Russia. We want peace. Everyone who will be there tomorrow in Washington has been on the side of peace from day one. But we want a robust peace, a peace that in no way can be a capitulation.
On the eve of pivotal talks with President Trump in Washington, French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a stark warning. Europe must present a united stance for Ukraine and demand real, robust, and lasting peace, never a peace of capitulation to Moscow.
This coalition of volunteers brings together all Europeans who support Ukraine, non-members of the European Union as well. I am thinking particularly of Norway, Albania and several others. Norway is an extremely active contributor to supporting Ukraine, but I am also thinking of other allies like Canada, as well as Japan or Australia, who were present with us this afternoon. We held this exchange, which lasted nearly 2 hours, with President Zelensky to prepare for tomorrow's meeting in Washington in an extremely serious context, both for Ukraine and for the security of all of Europe. It is indeed this context that decided with several European colleagues at the invitation of President Trump and President Zelensky to go with the letter to Washington tomorrow. Why? Because an important moment of the conflict is unfolding right now and an important time for the security of Ukraine and the security of all of Europe. And so, our objective for tomorrow is simple. The first is to remind what unites Ukraine, the Europeans, and the United States of America. We want peace, a robust, lasting peace. That is to say, respectful of international law, preceded by the return of prisoners, of children, and that allows for long-term stability, meaning it respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. It is the responsibility of the permanent members of the Security Council, which include the United States of America, the United Kingdom and France, and that is what we will reiterate, there is only one aggressor, Russia. Today there is essentially only one state proposing a peace that would be a capitulation, which is Russia. That's the first point. The second, based on the exchanges we have had and the initiatives taken by the United States, is to remind here that there cannot be territorial discussions concerning Ukraine without the legitimately democratically elected leaders of Ukraine. No discussion about Ukraine without the Ukrainians, but in the same way, no discussion about the security of Europeans without them. The third thing is to link any territorial question with security guarantees, and that is all the work we have done in recent months. And for me, one of the important points of tomorrow's meeting is to be able to explain to the American president all the work that has been done by the coalition of volunteers we have built, which is about defining the format of the Ukrainian army so that peace is indeed just and lasting. And that is a condition to put on the table. And there can be no division between the Ukrainians, the Europeans, and the Americans on this point. That is what we will strengthen tomorrow. Any agreement based on the absence of a Ukrainian army, on the reduction of a Ukrainian army, would be an insincere agreement doomed not to be respected, because such agreements have already existed in the past. And even when Russia itself signed non-aggression agreements towards Ukraine, which it did in 1994 with the Budapest Agreement, it did not respect them. And so the format of the Ukrainian army is the first pillar of these security guarantees. The second is these reassurance forces. And so if we are weak today with Russia, we will be preparing tomorrow's conflicts, and they will affect the Ukrainians. And make no mistake, they can also affect us at the very moment when our country continues to be regularly attacked in cyberspace, in information, or in contested areas from maritime to space. So, no weakness. Basically, what we are going to say is, we want peace. Everyone who will be there tomorrow in Washington has been on the side of peace from day one. But we want a robust peace, a peace that in no way can be a capitulation, a peace that in no way can be at the expense of European security.
Mr. President, you were talking about the issue of territories. Donald Trump seems to agree with the idea of front freeze in exchange for the cession of certain territories by Ukraine. We heard what you said about the Ukrainians having to decide for themselves, but do you not fear that the Ukrainians might be forced to accept these conditions? And would that, in your opinion, amount to what you call a capitulation?
Listen, first, I think it's up to President Trump to say what he stands for. I commend his desire for peace. I think it's very important. Having a president of the United States of America who stands for peace is a very important gesture.